In this video segment, we will be reviewing the different track types that we will be using while mixing in Pro Tools, their signal flow, and the different capabilities they possess. Most of the time, it will be 5 different track types that I like to use when mixing. Let's go ahead and pull up the new track dialog window and assign the first track. And of course, that one would be an audio track, which would probably be already present. Second one would be a stereo master fader. Number 3, let's do an instrument track, stereo. Number 4, let's do a aux input. We will be using many of those while mixing. And number 5, one of the most important ones, a VCA master. Select it from here, and you'll notice over here it does not give us the option for stereo, mono, quad, or surround because VCA masters do not pass audio, contrary to what many people think. So let's click OK, and here are our 5 tracks: VCA, aux 1, instrument, master, and an audio track. Now the audio track has its normal attributes, pan, record button, input button, mute button, solo button, inserts, sends, and so on. But one thing to remember, very important note, all of the inserts on tracks except for master faders are pre-fader inserts, meaning doesn't matter how much you bring this fader up or down, it will not change the level to the plugin at all. It's pre-fader. The only way to change the level that gets to a plugin is by changing the amplitude or gain of the waveform. And fortunately, for those of you using Pro Tools 10, which we will be for this mixing video, it is finally possible to do so. At this point, there is no way in Pro Tools to make an insert pre or post. Hopefully sometime down the road, they will implement that feature into Pro Tools. The next track type I would like to talk about is the master fader. And all mixes really should have a master fader assigned to them. Now, master faders, you would think, are controlling all of the outputs from all of the bus paths inside of the Pro Tools mixer. Now, the difference with the master fader is that the inserts on the master fader are post-fader, meaning when you move a master fader up or down, it does change the level to the plugins. Very important to remember on the master fader. If I change this level on this master fader, it will change the gain to inserts assigned to the master fader. The master faders are pre-inserts. And really, if you look here, all your other tracks, outputs are coming into the master fader. That's why there's only an output selection on the master fader. So when you move any other channels, it changes the level input to the master fader. So in my mind, the master fader is really an input channel. Let's move on to the third track, which would be right here, the instrument track. Now, you're probably saying, well, why do I use instrument tracks in mixes? I use instrument tracks all the time to re-trigger drums. I change waveforms into MIDI notes and use trigger programs. I also use instrument tracks a lot to re-trigger keyboard sounds. If there's, let's say, a piano sound I really don't like and I want to enhance it, I will bring out the MIDI track, insert a piano sound on the instrument track, and there we go. I can enhance the sound in the mix. And an instrument track has a record button. It has an input selection, has your normal mutes, your pans, but must realize that it only records MIDI, not audio. Moving on to track type number 4, the aux input. We're going to be using many of these in mixing inside of Pro Tools. Aux inputs are one of my favorite kind of track types when mixing. Auxiliary inputs provide the same signal routing options as audio tracks, except their input must come from an internal bus or hardware input. They have the same input selections as audio tracks, the same output selections, mute button, solo button, but if you notice right here, there's no record button. Aux tracks are not disc tracks. They cannot play back audio. You will often use auxiliary tracks as return for bus sends. By busing a track to the auxiliary input, you can also do the following. You can consolidate volume control of any submix under a single fader. I use this process all the time with background vocals. Remember, inserts on aux inputs are pre-fader, just like audio tracks are. So when you move the fader up or down, does not change the level to the plugins. Last but not least, one of the most important track types while mixing, the VCA fader right here. VCA stands for Voltage Controlled Amplifier. Now, VCA master tracks were introduced into Pro Tools back in HD 7.2 to emulate voltage-controlled amplifiers on analog consoles. VCA masters were traditionally used to control the overall level of a group of faders that were assigned to the VCA. One thing to remember, very important, VCAs do not pass audio. You'll see right here, there's no input selection or output selection. There's a mute button, a solo button. There is an input and a record, but they're not active. They do not pass audio, contrary to what a lot of people believe. Now, to make a VCA master active, we have to create a group. So let's go down and select Audio 1, Master, Instrument, and Aux 1 and make a group. We all know how to do that. Apple G brings up the group dialog. Let's move it into view, and you'll see the current tracks in that group. Now, up in this right corner, you'll notice it'll say VCA, and it's not assigned to a group. Let's assign it to VCA1, which is the group we made. Now, look here, you'll notice a level meter has appeared on the VCA channel, even though it's not passing audio. So, as we look here, it's set to group VCA1. Now, if I take this fader and move it, you'll notice they'll all move down equally. But the beauty of a VCA master is I can now go in and individually control or change the members of the group assigned to the VCA. Move the faders anywhere you want, then you can go back to the master and they'll track in a linear fashion to the VCA master. This is one of the most powerful features that DigiDesign has ever added to Pro Tools for mixing. And remember, the VCA master does not pass any audio, so there's no loss of quality to the audio signal while using VCA masters. Now, I use VCA masters in conjunction with aux input masters, which we'll get into a little bit later while mixing. Let's just take a quick look at the edit window to show you what these track types look like in the edit window. Here they are, the 5 different tracks. We have the VCA, which there's no input, output, or inserts because they pass no audio. There's just a group assigned. The aux input, inserts, sends, input, outputs, and there is no record button and no input button. Aux tracks are not disc tracks. They have the same fader, level control, but they do not have the ability to play back audio from the disc. Let's go right to the instrument track. Instrument tracks only record MIDI. They have sends. They have inserts available. They do have a mute button. They have a solo button, a record button to record MIDI. They have an input and output. Master fader, no sends on master faders because they are inputs. Master faders control the master output levels of outputs and bus paths from other tracks. And the inserts on a master fader are post fader, meaning When I move this level of the master fader up or down, it will affect the level to the plugins on the master fader. Very important to remember. Let's demonstrate that now. I will add a signal generator to the aux track. Remember, aux tracks inserts are pre-fader. And you'll see here, I can go grab the VCA, and you'll notice when I move the VCA master, the level in the aux track does not change, but it does on the master, because the output of the aux track is going to the input of the master. Let's now add any plugin to the master fader. How about this EQ? And you'll notice the level meters here. Now, when I go to the master fader volume and move it, watch what happens. The level in the plugin follows the fader. The insert on the master is post-fader. Meters on master faders always show post-fader levels, unlike any other track type. It's one of the only track types in Pro Tools that will do that. You have to keep that in mind if you have processors on your master fader inserts. Just to prove the point again, aux tracks are pre-fader. So if I bring up the signal generator, move this volume on this aux channel, you'll notice in the meter here that the level does not change, proving that aux input inserts are pre-fader. Totally different than a master. Watch again. I'll move the fader up and down. It will not change, but it will change the level to the master. So that will be the 5 main track types we will be using while mixing in Pro Tools. And now you know the different signal flow that some of these tracks offer. Let's move on to the next segment in this video series.